All right, here we go. Okay. So, by the way, a perfectly useless piece of trivia. Do you know what the number one name is in the United States? You know, they have every year they report what was the number one name for boys and the number one name for girls. No, Jane. Jane's not even in the list of the top 10. Number one name for girls 5 years running is Olivia. And the number one name for boys 7 years running is Liam. I don't even know, what is that? Liam is, what is that? Is it a Liam? Is it a Muslim name? Where is that from? I don't even know that's 7 years running. So I always assume there must be some sort of celebrity who I'm not aware of whose name is Liam, because they say there's another name that's jumped about 1,500 places. A girl's name, it's not in the top 10 yet, but it's jumped about 1,500 places. They have a ranking for that, which is Keela, because some TikTok star named Keela K or something like that. So that's what they're assuming is the, very deep. All right, very deep, Liam. So I always assumed that's what Michael was very big when Michael Jordan was playing. So Michael was a very big name. You know, that's how they. That's why I always assume there's some star that's what do you call it?
Is LeBron up there?
LeBron has never been up there. No, I only know of one LeBron. Never quite made it onto the list. Yeah. Okay. So yesterday we had finished off with an interesting idea. I left out one part over. We finished off with the idea of Emor ve'amarta being a soft terminology. Remember we spoke about that it's a soft terminology to remind us that Torah is. It looks a little bit challenging and perhaps even overwhelming sometimes. It really is very, very pleasant. So, what do you call it? I see Rav Moshe Feinstein says that this is also a reminder to us, to parents. It's not only about the Kohanim. It's Emor ve'amarta. When you're raising children, you should raise children be soft with them. Emor ve'amarta. If you want to be mechanech your children, when you want to train your children, don't be harsh. Harsh just doesn't work. He was asked, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, it's documented in his tshuvas, in the Igros Moshe. He was asked by somebody, as a policy, should parents be tough or should parents be a little bit more soft and flexible? So Rabbi Moshe said, that Moshe in his inimitable manner, he said, the first rule when it comes to raising children is that there are no rules. First rule is there are no rules, because all kids are individuals. But as a rule, that's what he said, there are no rules. But as a rule, leniency works a little better than stringency. That's what Moshe said. So Emor ve'amarta is a reminder to the parents that when you're raising your children, the easiest, I remember my father always told me, he said, the easiest word for parents to say is no. It's the easiest word to say. But you can't just always say no. If you say no, you're going to be saying no a million times. I remember my brother's kids were once at the house by my parents. Their grandchildren, my nephews, they were at the parents. They were little kids at the time. I think my nephew was about 4.5, and the girl was about 3. And they said to my father, Zadie, can we jump on the couch? So I knew my father was going to say no. So he said to them, 1 second. He said, just 1 second. So he took the couch and he turned the couch around so it's facing the wall so that they have the wall, they're protected on one side and they have the back of the couch on the other side, and so now they could jump on the couch. And I'm looking like, Dad, as a kid, jump on the couch. We didn't even go in the living room, jump on the couch. You know what, we got to jump on the couch. And all of a sudden there he is, because with grandchildren, you're always different. And I said, Dad, why did you do that? I didn't have kids. I don't know if I was married at the time. I thought I was just married. I said, Dad, why'd you do that? He goes, well, why shouldn't I make it possible then? They want to jump on the couch. Why not make it possible then for jump on the couch? Oh, okay. But nowadays, generations change. Your parents raised you. I don't know how, but I know how your parents were raised. Your parents were raised in a society that no, and there's no, it's a kind of a little bit more rigid. Nowadays, all the rules have changed. Every generation, the rules change. The rules change because nowadays there's so many things kids want to do that we don't want them to do. You have to save your bullets. You have to save your bullets with your kids. It's got to be yes until it has to be no. So from a Torah perspective, for example, we don't want our kids with smartphones, and we don't want our kids with the internet. We don't want our kids doing. But you don't want your kid coming back to you one day and saying to you, "Dad, you never let us do anything. It was always no, no, no." And therefore, what you have to do is you have to say yes, 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 until it's absolutely got to be the things that annoy me, I have to say yes to, even if it annoys me. But the things that are a red line, I have to be able to say no. You are the parent, you're going to have to say no, but you can't have your kid turn around and say, "You never let us do anything." You understand? You have to, and it's not, listen, if it was so easy, and it's not easy. And there's an expression in Chazal, something called tsar gidul banim. Tsar gidul banim means the difficulty of raising children. It's called tsar gidul banim. It's like, it starts with waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to change them and to feed them and what do you call it, and then supervise them and take them to doctors, and then go to parent-teachers meeting and drive carpool, and then when they're teenagers, then they put you away for good. We haven't even gotten to the teenage years yet. When they really age you. Right, so there's something called tsar gidul banim. This guy comes to this Rav. Father comes over and says, "I can't take this. My kids are giving me such a hard time. I can't take this tsar gidul banim. They're giving me this one's struggling, this one's chutzpahdik, and this one, I can't take this tsar gidul banim." So the Rav looked at me and says, "That's not tsar gidul banim. That's not the difficulty of raising children. That's raising children. You haven't even gotten to the difficulties yet." So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is saying that you have to be soft. That's Emor Marta. Okay, now take a look at Pasuk Beis. So ki im l'she'ero hakorov elav, his next of kin, which is his wife, le'imo le'aviv, mother, father, v'livno levita olachiv, his son, his daughter, and his brother. That means there are 7 relatives that a regular Kohen comes into contact with when they die. 7 relatives. They are wife, father, mother, brother, son, daughter, brother, and sister if she's not married. 7 relatives. Sister, once she's married, so then she's off limits to her brother. Sister, if she does. So there's 7 relatives that the Kohen has to get involved with over here. Now, the question here is, what is the... HaKadosh Baruch Hu, nothing happens by accident. So what is the whole point? Anybody, Chas v'Shalom, Rachmana litzlan, somebody suffers a loss, it's painful. What's the point? What's the point? What's the point of the pain of the loss? So the answer is the pain of the loss is the same as the point of any pain in life. Pain of a loss is to get a person to start doing tshuva. Person has to do. The Gemara says, ein chet below, ein yisurim below chet. Person doesn't suffer without having sinned. Obviously, any suffering in life that a person goes through, none of it is meaningless. When we go through, a person goes through suffering, and it can be the slightest. Gemara says, as an example, what's considered suffering? What would be an example of suffering? The Gemara says, somebody sticks his hand in his pocket to pull out 3 coins, and he pulls out 2 coins. Now he has to stick his hand in his pocket again to pull out a 3rd coin. That's called a form of suffering. That's called a form of suffering. Interesting, the Gemara says, if you got to drop your coins in your pocket, and you only dropped in 2, then you got to drop in the 3rd one, that's not considered suffering. Because that's not such an inconvenience. To drop them into the pocket is not about that. Fish it out of the pocket, that's already you've crossed the line into what's considered suffering. And that a person goes through all of life's, all the various forms of suffering, none of it is purposeless. It's all got a purpose. What is the purpose? The purpose is to either to be an atonement or to get a guy to urge a guy to do tshuva. So Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, that's a remarkable story. Reb Chatzkel Levenstein was the mashgiach of the what do you call it, the Panovich Yeshiva. Now he was with the Mir Yeshiva. You know the story of the Mir Yeshiva? They went through the Mir Yeshiva in World War II. They went through. They escaped from Poland. They went all the way across Russia. They went to Japan. I think they were in Japan for about 6 months, and then they went to Shanghai, China. They were there for 5 years in Shanghai. The entire yeshiva survived. It's a remark. There's a book in the library called Torah. I think it's called Torah Rescue, the story of Torah Rescue. It's just a remarkable story. 400 guys are in the yeshiva, traveling together, 200 or 400, whatever it was, a few hundred. They get to China. Now, where are you going to have a yeshiva in China? There was a shul sitting there in Shanghai that had been built by, there had been a Sephardic community there. There's a very wealthy man who built a massive shul, an eccentric rich man built a massive shul. Which told me, what are you building a shul like this for? Like a small community for 15 people. What do you build? He built a shul that held hundreds of people, and the shul sat empty for 15 years. And then the Mir Yeshiva arrived in China. They had a nicer base medrash than they had when they were back in Poland. And they survived the war. They're remarkable stories. Reb Chatzkel Levenstein was the leader of the Mir Yeshiva at the time. He was the mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva at the time. So then he came to Eretz Yisrael, and he was with the Mir Yeshiva. The Panovich Yeshiva drafted him, pulled him away. They wanted him to be mashgiach there. So he was known as the mashgiach. There's an art scroll book on him, Reb Chatzkel. So Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, his wife was nifter. He was already in his 80s. His wife was nifter. So people came to comfort him, comfort Reb Chatzkel Levenstein. So at a certain point, people come in and they talk about how his wife was nice, was this, that, everything. That's what you do when you comfort a born. At a certain point, Rav Chatzkel turned to the people and said, not one of you is honest. Chatzkel said, none of us are honest. Woo. What do you mean none of us are honest? He says, because if you were honest, you would say to me, the reason you're going through this suffering, that your wife died, is because you've done averas. This is an interesting perspective. We just think, well, yeah, listen, she's not going to live forever. You got to die sometime. Doesn't work that way. Even that, maybe he would have died first. He wouldn't have had to go through that pain. He said to them, if he's going through that pain, so that pain is also part of the pain HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought to the world. An interesting perspective. Nobody thinks of those terms. Somebody once told me, a very big mashgiach here in Eretz Yisrael, he said, when a younger person dies, a younger person dies, so people are all broken up about it. When an older person dies, people are like, well, what do you expect? The guy was 95, what do you expect? Nobody lives forever. He says it should be exactly the opposite. Because when a younger person dies, people could comfort to console themselves by saying, well, it won't happen to me. Not all, most younger people don't die. So but when an older person dies, nobody can say it won't happen to me. Everybody's on the list. So a person should be more broken up when an older person dies, because that's a reminder that one day it's them. When a younger person, so at least you can say that. That's why people always ask, you ever notice when somebody dies prematurely? Somebody dies at a young age, somebody dies, people always ask, what happened? He was a big smoker. And so people are, okay, well, good, I don't smoke, it won't happen to me, right? Isn't that true? People always ask, what happened? Well, he was speeding. He was driving. Well, I don't speed, so what happened to me, right? Or even if unfortunately when there are terrorist attacks, well, where was it? Well, it was in Hebron. I never go to Hebron, so I should be okay. That's how people think. True or not true? True or not? That's how people think. I don't go there. I don't go there. Very true. Doesn't work. That's silly. That's silly. So the Torah is telling you that's the whole point. That's the whole point of this. By the way, for a woman, just an interesting point. For a woman to predecease her husband is actually considered, especially for a big Talmid Chacham, for a woman to predecease her husband is actually considered an honor for her. It's an honor for a woman to predecease her husband. Why? No, for her to die before her husband. It's actually considered, especially for somebody who's married to a big Talmid Chacham, it's considered an honor for her. Why would that be an honor?
So she could reap the benefits of her husband?
Okay, she gets the benefits even if she's alive. I mean, as long as she stays alive, she gets the benefits also. It's a partnership.
She doesn't have any suffering?
She doesn't have to suffer that he died before her. But that's suffering. Why is it considered an honor? Not an honor. It's considered a kavod for a woman.
Well, practically, he's going to do everything correctly and read Kaddish like.
So that's what Alan was saying. But that's going to happen while she's alive. She has all his merits also. When a woman is married, I know that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, when he met his wife, he said, I'm making a deal with you that all my Torah learning, we divide 50-50. We have a partnership here, which you don't have to say it. It's a given. Not only it's a given, a man who learns in Kollel and his wife works to support him, of course it's a partnership. Her wife takes care of the house so he can learn. Of course it's a partnership. They're in it together. The problem is that the men have, for a wife, she's always doing her job and working and everything else. The man is supposed to be learning and he's kitzling around. He's not pulling his end of the deal. So there's a partnership there. It's called an honor because there's a concept. There's a very interesting halacha concept. There's an honor. Have you ever heard the expression of katlanis? Katlanis means a killer. Literally, the word katla means to die or to kill. So a woman could have a halachic say, a woman who's been married 3 times and all her husbands have died, she's no one's allowed to marry her. She's considered a katlanis. She's a killer. She's a killer. Women have a strange power, by the way. There's a strange power by women. She's a killer. Nobody could marry her. A woman who predeceases her husband, it's an honor. She's obviously not a katlanis. She died before him, not after him. So she's not even the first husband dies, so she's already one third of the way towards becoming a katlanis. There are different halachic depending on how he died. Usually, if it's an older man who died of natural causes at a normal time, that doesn't count. But if it was like 3 strange deaths, the 3 unexpected deaths, then it's stay away type of thing. All right, there are different halachic ramifications. So that's why it's considered for an honor for a woman to predecease her husband. That means that's a sign. That's the ultimate sign that she's not a killer. Yeah, she's a dyer, not a killer. Right? And it's actually brought down that that's a covered for a woman. Now, by the way, this law by the Kohanim does not apply to women. Women are allowed to come into contact with a dead body. Not only they're allowed to, it's a mitzvah. It's a biggest chesed called a chesed shel emes. A woman whose father is a kohen, she's what's called a bas kohen. She has none of the restrictions of being a woman who's married to a kohen. My wife's husband is a kohen. That's me. Why say it straight if you can say, right, I'm a kohen, my wife happens to be a bas kohen also. My wife's a bas kohen and she's married to a kohen. But she doesn't have any of the restrictions of coming into contact with what? She could be on the Chaver Kadisha. There are women on the Chaver Kadisha.
If a woman is Israel and marries a Kohen,
she's got none of these restrictions. She's got other privileges. If she marries a Kohen, she could eat Truma. In the time when the base of Egypt, when there's Truma, she could eat Truma. And if she's a Bas Kohen who marries a Yisrael, she can't eat Truma. Her status is what her husband is. Now, my wife happens to be a Bas Kohen. My father was obviously a Kohen. Father Elshon was a Kohen. My mother was a Bas Kohen. My older brother is a Kohen, and his wife is a Bas Kohen. Yeah, and my younger brother, his wife is not a Bas Kohen. So we haven't spoken to them in 20 years. But the woman's status has nothing to do with that. Why doesn't she have these restrictions? A woman is allowed to come into contact with the body, and it's called a chesed shel emes. The Chaver Kadisha is called a chesed shel emes society. Why is the woman not got the restrictions the Kohen has? Because a woman brought death to the world. Where did she bring death to the world? The original sin. Because she ate from the forbidden fruit, gave it to her husband. That brought death to the world. There would have been no death before that. So since she brought death to the world, I mean, it's not the first Dvar Torah you tell a girl on a shidduch, hi, what's your name? Chani. Really? Wow, I'm really impressed. You guys brought death to the world. You guys say, oh yeah? Just wait till we get married, buddy. And you're going to see what death is. No, that's not the first Dvar Torah I would tell a girl, but can you imagine? Women brought death to the world, so they have to be involved as a tikkun for having brought death to the world. In order to rectify that, they're allowed to be involved. Haven't got this restriction. That's one of the reasons women light candles Friday night. Why does the wife light the candles? Why does the wife light the candles? So there's a pasuk. What's that? That's why they do like this. You ever see women do like this when they light the candles, right? There's no halachic requirement to do that. But the women do it because it's like welcoming and bringing in Shabbos. They're bringing in Shabbos. It's like, they're bringing in Shabbos. But we love them, so we let them do what they want. But what do you call it? What are you laughing at? That's going to bring it. Well, why do they light the candles? Why do they light the candles? You know why they cover their eyes, by the way? because they're not supposed to get hana from the candles till they what do you call it? Till they make the bracha. That's what they could close their eyes also, but there'd be less drama. But the what do you call it? There's a pasuk that says, Ner Hashem, God's candle, God's flame, Nishmas Adam is man's soul. There's a pasuk. Ner Hashem, Nishmas Adam. I think it's in Mishlei. Ner Hashem, Nishmas Adam. Man's soul is God's flame. Who extinguished that flame? The women. And therefore, Lel Shabbos was when it was Friday when that flame was extinguished, and therefore, everything is a method to this madness. It all makes sense in Judaism. Therefore, she rekindles those flames. The only time a man lights candles if he's living alone. If a man's living alone, he has to light Shabbos candles. A man's traveling also, depending how far he ways from home. So he also has to light his candles. What I do when I travel is usually if I'm in America, if I'm overseas, so usually what I do, I don't light if I'm staying by somebody's house, so I actually give them money. And I buy in as a partner in the woman's Neiros. So she's lighting Neiros, I'm a partner in the lighting of the candles, instead of lighting my own. But if you're staying in a hotel or you're on your own, some of these guys who are kashrus mashgichim, and they go to India, they go to China and all these places. They're staying in a hotel for Shabbos, so they have to light their own candles. A man lights his own candles. In the home, a man would light candles if you see it's getting close to Shabbos and his wife's not able to light the candles, so that a man actually has to light the candles. But that never happens. And don't go grab your wife's mitzvah. You'll be sorry. Right? You'll be sorry. Don't ever grab her lighting candles mitzvah. Women take their mitzvahs very seriously. Women take men. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Women whatever they got to do, they're very conscientious about it. So don't go grabbing it. But that's why the women light the candles. By the way, there's an interesting halacha. If a woman ever forgets to light candles, she has to add another candle. Now, some people only light 2 candles. Some people light 2 candles. Some people have a minhag of adding 1 candle for each child that's born. That's many people have that minhag, and some people stop at a certain point. We've always added a candle each child was born. So, what's that? No, grandchildren. The parents do it. We've always added a candle. And then later on in life, when the kid's about 4 years old, you could say to the kid, Shmuley, that candle is you. Make the kid feel, you're our flame, right? And when they're teenagers, you say to the kid, you set me on fire. so the kid is, what do you call it? The kids are the candles. So that there's an interesting, if a woman ever forgets to light candles, how could that be? How could a woman ever forget to light candles? So I'll tell you what happened. My wife actually forgot once. It was Shabbos Chanukah. So normally you light the Chanukah candles, then you go on your ben shlicht. So this one year, we lit the Chanukah candles, then I went off to shul Friday night. I come back, my kids weren't home, nobody was in there, just me and my wife were sitting there. My wife was sitting on the couch, and the kids weren't back from shul yet, they davened a different minyan. And I'm sitting there, my wife's sitting on the couch, I'm sitting across the room from her, and we're just schmoozing, and all of a sudden she's talking, and all of a sudden she looks past me, and we have our candles are up on a lid. She's just kind of talking like this, all of a sudden she goes, I didn't light the Shabbos candles. So I take a look, and they're talking, she never lit the Shabbos candles. So I said, oh, I know what happened. You probably, because we lit the Chanukah licht, and she forgot once we lit the licht, something got lit. So she's just looking, I didn't light the Shabbos candles. I said, yeah, well, listen, it's not your fault. Obviously we got mixed up here. I didn't light the Shabbos candle. She couldn't get past it. She was me, what's for supper? She was devastated. Every year since then, on Friday night when we light the Chanukah licht, I light the Chanukah licht in a room off the living room. She's already standing by the door. As soon as I'm lighting the Chanukah candles, she's standing by the door getting ready to go ben shlicht. She's not going to forget again. And even then, it wasn't clear to me that was closer to an onus. There's a woman, let's say a woman's in the hospital. She's not feeling well. She can't light candles. So you don't have to add another candle. She didn't forget. That's not considered forgetting. So here I wasn't convinced. I asked the posek. He said, yeah, you should add one. But I wasn't convinced that that's, or no, I didn't even ask the posek. I didn't even ask the posek. I just said she decided she's going to add one because I'm not convinced that she had to. But ever since then, she's added a candle, right? But that's how you could forget. Otherwise, they're not going to forget. They don't forget. Men forget. Men forget to daven. Men forget to put on tefillin. Men forget to bed. Men forget it's Pesach. Men forget everything. Women don't forget. Well, women aren't. They don't forget. Yeah.
We collect a question. You add one candle forever or just next week?
Forever. It's cost me a lot of money over the years. You know, every Shabbos another candle. Huh? That's halacha. That's halacha. You always you had a candle and you always had another candle.
So what happens if you forget 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah, you're a guy that's going to cost you even more. Comes down to cash, bro. Yeah, bro.
What's the deep meaning? Why to add a candle? What does it symbol as the extra?
It's almost like a penalty. It's like kefil, like a ganav-based kefil, like we're learning about in the Gemara. I mean, women don't need such a, but it's like a penalty. Okay, let's go on. Take a look at Pasuk Vav. Skip down at the Pasuk Vav. Pasuk Hey. So the Torah says like this. Pasuk Hey. It's 5 lines to the bottom. Lo yikracha korcha barosham. They should not make a cut in their hair.
English translation is a bit different.
What is it?
Bald spot.
A bald spot on their heads. They should make a bald spot. What's wrong with making it? We'll see in a second. Upaaz zekonam lo yigalechu. They shouldn't shave their face. Ubivsaram lo yisretu sarates. They shouldn't make a scrape in their skin. So here it's talking about doing these things. First of all, it's prohibited to shave with a razor anyway. To go and make a bald spot on your head, say this part you're not allowed to shave down. Okay, take a look at Rashi, Pasuk Hey. It's 3 letters above. Lo yikruchu korcha al mace, over a dead body, over somebody who dies. That means you don't tear your hair out when somebody dies out of distress, and you don't go cutting your skin out of distress. I once saw a picture. I saw a picture of do you remember in Iran, Ayatollah Khomeini? Remember Ayatollah Khomeini? He should rest in pieces. And so I remember when Ayatollah Khomeini died. Oh, that was a good day. Ayatollah Khomeini, he needed dying real bad. And so Ayatollah Khomeini died. So Time Magazine, it had a million people came to his funeral. So Time Magazine had a picture of these Iranians, these were the religious, what do you call it? They had a picture of these Iranian women cutting they had cut the sides of their heads over here with glass, and their blood coming down. There was a sign of mourning. And it was a very happy funeral, by the way. What happened was you had a million Iranians, and they brought they had the grave. This is the supreme religious leader of Iran. So in order to get the body to the grave, they had a helicopter, and the helicopter flew over the crowd because these Iranians were frenzied, a boiling hot day, and they were all in a frenzy. And then they get to the grave. The helicopter had to fly over, flew to the grave, which was a few hundred yards away from where the crowd was. And so there were 8 guys on the helicopter, and by the time they got the body out of the helicopter, the crowd noticed, they realized what had just happened, that they flew the body over. So the crowd started rushing towards the helicopter, towards, they're these frenzied Iranians. So these 8 guys take the body and started running towards the grave with the body. At a certain point, they dropped the body. And when they got close to the grave, they just kind of shoveled it in, and let go plop, and got on the helicopter just so they could fly out of there and get out of there. So I remember seeing this picture. These women are bleeding down from the sides of their heads. So the Gemara, the Torah says we don't do that. That's what the Goyim did. We don't do that. Why? So here, the Torah is teaching us that the self-control, remember we spoke about last week in Parsha Kadosh about self-control. Even when it comes to mourning, a Torah Jew has to know that he never loses control. Mourning is got rules. The first 3 days are the most intense. 7 days, he sits Shiva, and he For 7 days he said Shiva, and they're restricted, they're rules. You don't get up, you don't leave the house, you say Kaddish. Then there's 30 days, and after 30 days is what do you call it? 30 days is another level, then you can get a haircut. And then you have a year. But it's gradually reducing, and you're not supposed to, a person who's mourning, the Torah says, not to overcry. You don't overcry. Don't have, and the Medrash says, don't be more merciful than God. God felt this person has to be taken. Don't be more merciful than God. Obviously, a person's crying for themselves more than the deceased. So there's a Medrash that says that there's a woman who one of her children died. And she cried and cried. She couldn't be consoled. So she went, I think it was Rabbi Gamliel, and he said to her, don't cry so much because it's not good. If you cry too much, then there's a punishment for overcrying. Then her second son died. And eventually all 7 of her sons died because she refused to be comforted. A Torah Jew has to know that overcrying means that we're not willing to accept God's judgment. Overcrying means we're not accepting God's judgment. And that even in, so when a person goes and starts cutting themselves up, the Torah says, no, we don't go that far. You're distressed, but that has to be controlled. Rav Aaron Kotler, when he was nifter, so there were 2 stories. When Rav Aaron Kotler was nifter, his wife was in the hospital room, and everybody in the room, when he was nifter, Rav Aaron Kotler was nifter, everybody in the hospital room, the Talmidim were there, everybody started crying. So his wife went over and she closed the door of the room so nobody in the hospital should be bothered by the crying. There was another gadol, I forgot who it was, who a family member died, and somebody started wailing. And this gadol said, Jews don't wail like that. Jews cry, don't wail. It's not something we do. So the cutting and the making bald spots and that sort of thing, that's something that the Torah says we don't do. It's said by the Kohanim, interesting, one of the Farshas, why does it say that by Kohanim? It's a restriction on Torah, on Yisrael's also. So I saw one of the Farshim says, the idol-worshipping priests, what did they used to do? Idol-worshipping priests used to do a lot of this sort of stuff. They used to cut themselves, they used to go, so there were 2 reasons they did it. Number 1, they were always into various forms of necromancy, of contacting the dead. But number 2, they want to show how high and holy they are. They want to show the people how holy they are. They're the holy men. So they would either shave themselves or do all sorts of things to demonstrate holiness, where the whole bunch of them were a bunch of lowlifes. They were guilty of the worst abominations. Yet to put on a show for the people, they would cut themselves and do all these things to show how holy they are. A Kohen, the leaders of the people, have to show that they're holy through their actions, not by doing something, not by wearing their religion on their sleeve like that. Through your behavior, learning Torah, being Baal Chesed, doing tzedakah, that sort of thing, that's how you show that you're a leader of the people. That's how you show that you're holiness. Don't show your holiness by going and doing something external where they're guilty of the worst forms of behavior. If you know what goes on in the Catholic Church and how many scandals they've had in the Catholic Church, that we don't have to go and put on a show for anybody. Through the behavior, that's the Kedusha of the Kohanim. Okay. Take a look at Pasuk Zayin. Now talks about who Kohanim marry. So the bottom line, page 672, second line from the bottom. Isha zona v'chalola lo yikachu. They are not allowed to marry a woman who is what's called a zona and a chalola. Now, a zona, Rashi says, is a woman, a Jewish woman who has been involved in a forbidden relationship. She's lived with, Rashi gives an example that she's lived with, let's say, her brother. She had a relationship with her brother. She had a relationship with a non-Jew. That's what's called a zona. Zona also refers to a harlot. But here, it means a woman who's been involved in a forbidden relationship. The definition of a forbidden relationship means that if these 2 people would want to get married, they couldn't. As opposed to a single guy and a single girl. A single Jewish man and a single Jewish girl, that does not do anything to her halachic status other than put her off limits to a Kohen Gadol. Because a Kohen Gadol has to marry a virgin. But she is not a chalol and she's not a zona. She's just lived with a Jewish guy. If they living out of wedlock. And even if they have a child, the child's not a mamzer and he's got no halachic stigma. He's got no halachic limitations. He may have a social stigma that he's born out of wedlock, but there's absolutely no. I was once a counselor in a day camp in Chicago. There happened to be years earlier when I was growing up in Chicago. I remember I was too young to appreciate what was really going on, but the daughter of an elderly rabbi, who was not very, the daughter was not very rabbinic, and she actually got pregnant with a guy who was in a yeshiva who wasn't very yeshivish, and they had a kid. And I remember hearing about it when I was about 9 years old. Maybe I was a little older, maybe 11, 12 years old. It was a big scandal. This girl, her father was a big rav. She got pregnant and eventually had a kid. I didn't hear any more about it. Then later, when I was 20 years old, I was a counselor at camp, and I had this 9-year-old kid who was this 9-year-old kid was one of my campers, and I asked him his name, and as soon as he said his name, I was like, oh. This is the kid. This is the kid. That was the kid. Right. I made the connection. I never said anything to the kid, but I made the connection. Like, oh, that's the kid. Oh, that's who I heard about back then. But he has no halachic limitations, and there's no stigma because she's a Jewish woman with a Jewish man. If he was a non-Jew that lived with a Jewish girl, she's off limits to a Kohen. That's one of the things that a Kohen nowadays, particularly Baalei Tshuvas who are dating girls who are Baalus Tshuvas. So a Kohen who's looking to get married has to make sure that this girl, even if she had a boyfriend, the boyfriend wasn't Jewish. Obviously, the young man doesn't investigate this. The shadchan has to investigate it, and a girl has to be asked straight out. They got to find out if a girl says, I had a couple. I was living on a college campus, and I was living like a regular college girl. Well, one of her several customers may have not been Jewish, and the problem nowadays is a lot of people who think they're Jewish are not. A lot of people who think they're not Jewish are. A name like Goldstein doesn't tell you that a person's Jewish, and a name like O'Hara doesn't tell you that he's not Jewish, because it could very well be that his mother was Jewish. So, by the way, do you know that what's his name in England? Who's the guy in line after Charles? William. William's married to Kate?
Yeah.
Where's Kate? Kate's mother, there is very strong suspicion that Kate's mother is Jewish. That her mother's mother was Jewish, and that therefore she's Jewish, and that therefore Kate's Jewish, and therefore that the Crown Prince of England is the Crown Prince of England. But William's, who's William's older son? George or something? What's his name? George, Harry, whatever the name is. Whoever the one in line for England may very well be Jewish. There are serious rumors, serious suspicion here. It's not been confirmed that Kate herself is Jewish. So, he'll end up in Ohr Somayach. Yeah. The gentlemen, the king has arrived. What do you call from the Lion King? The king has arrived. So what do you call but here the Kohen's got these limitations. Nowadays it's very practical. These are questions that come up all the time. It's not so simple. And a Kohen's not allowed to marry a woman who is a chalola. A chalola means a Kohen married a woman who is prohibited to him. For example, if a Kohen marries a divorcee, which he's not allowed to do, if they have a child, that daughter is a chalola. She can marry a regular Yisrael. She can't marry a Kohen. And then you have the Isha Grusha Me Isha Legal. They're not allowed to marry a divorcee. A Kohen could marry a widow. He cannot marry a divorcee.
Why?
Oh. 2 reasons. Number 1, divorce carries more of a stigma than widow. A woman whose husband died, in many cases, it's not her fault, unless she poisoned him, right? Generally, it's not her fault. A divorce, you always got to say, even though most divorces are the husband's fault, but you always got to, it carries a certain stigma on the woman, number 1. Number 2, there's a concern, a Kohen has to live with a woman whose mind is pure. The Gemara says that there's a decree that somebody who dies eventually is forgotten. Now, it's obviously not true, You remember your grandparents. You didn't forget your grandparents. What that means is that the intensity of the pain that's felt at the time of the death is that intensity gradually dissipates. And a person is the deceased leaves the heart. A woman who's divorced, so somebody else could marry her while her ex-husband is alive. The problem, the concern there is that this woman, when she's living with her second husband, may still be thinking about her first husband. Whereas a woman whose husband has died, that is more removed from her mind. So that compromises the kedusha of the Kohen. That's what the commentaries explain. So what do you call it? Number one. Number two, a widow, have you ever heard the idea when it comes to shidduchim, people always say, kasha lezavgan kekriyas yamsuf. It's as hard to match people up as the splitting of the sea. Have you ever heard that idea, kasha? Okay. Now the Gemara also says that 40 days before a child is born, before a man is born, 40 days, it's announced, there's a heavenly voice, there's a bas kol that says, bas ploni leploni. It's predetermined, preordained who the wife's going to be. So how do you reconcile that? Well, is it preordained or is it as difficult to do as the splitting of the sea? Obviously, nothing's difficult for God, but that means that it's some miraculous occurrence. Why is it a miraculous occurrence? There was a bas kol that already predetermined it. It was preordained. So the Gemara says, well, no. Kan bezivug rishon. In the first marriage, it's preordained. It's the bas kol. Kan bezivug sheni. Now, many people understand zivug sheni means in a second marriage. That for a guy, if he's gone for a second marriage, to find a woman for a second marriage, that's already a miraculous occurrence. Whereas the first one is a bas kol. That's how most people understand it. But there's another explanation. There is a bas kol, and there is a woman who's preordained. When Reuven is born, there's a woman who's preordained for him. But through his actions, he may actually miss out on his preordained one, and he may get a second choice. It may be zivug sheni.
What age?
We don't know. We don't know about these things. We assume that this is the one, and make sure you tell your wife, oh, you're the one, right? But never say to your wife, oh yeah, well, I missed my first choice, but you'll have to do. They always make jokes in Sphere, so Omer. It's like this husband, if you don't know what date it is, what number is today? Let's say you're davening Mar. If you say to somebody, what's today? Let's say it's supposed to be the seventh day of the Omer. So you say to somebody, what number is today? So you're supposed to say, well, yesterday was the sixth one, right? So they always tell the joke about the husband who comes home. He says, hey, says his wife, what's for supper? She goes, well, last night was hamburgers. And that's what they say about Sphere Summer. So a guy told me a joke this year. Wife says to her husband, how do I look? He says, well, last night you looked better. Don't make those jokes. And don't make the jokes about, your second try, that sort of thing. So the zivug sheni could be the one that you missed the first one. Sometimes not only you missed sometimes you upgraded. You got a better one than the first one. The first one was predetermined, but through your actions you got zivug sheni. You got one that's actually better than what you deserved when you originally started out. Again, these are concepts. We don't apply it practically. Practically, if you meet the girl on a shidduch and it's a good match, she's got money, then you marry her, right? Don't start thinking, it's zivug rishon. Don't start looking at palms and wondering about, none of that. But that's the concept. Here, the Kohen's allowed to marry an almana. Do you know what a mana means? A mana means a portion. A mana. Well, you go into a restaurant, it's a mana, tenli mana rishona, the first portion. Al means don't, not. The word al mana can mean that first guy who married her, she wasn't really his portion. Al mana, that wasn't his, she wasn't meant for him, she was meant for this guy. She was meant for this guy, for this Kohen. And therefore, a Kohen could marry an almana. He can't marry a grusha. Who's the most famous almana in history? Somebody married an almana, the most famous almana in history, and
Batya?
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba, good. Dovid married Bathsheba. Bathsheba was pre-married, married somebody else. Chazal say, the Zohar says, Bathsheba was predestined for Dovid HaMelech from Sheshes and Mebreshis. From the time of creation, that match was supposed to happen. Just that Dovid jumped the gun a little bit by having Uriah Hittite killed. But that match was meant to be from. How could that first guy marry her? So it actually says that Shema Yakdim Mena Barachamim. A guy could daven, and through his davening actually get the girl that he doesn't really deserve before somebody else. The Gemara actually comes, I think it was Rava. Somebody came to Rava, and he told Rava he's davening to marry a certain girl. So Rava said to him, "Don't daven. If she's meant for you, you'll get her. If she's meant for you, you'll get her." But not, and in the end, the guy davened anyway, and the two of them got married. Then he came back to Rav. He said, "I can't take it. Either she should die or I should die, but I can't take it." Rav said, "I told you not to daven for that. Don't daven for a specific one. Daven that Hashem should give you your zivug. We don't daven for a specific one. Sometimes people think, oh yeah, she's definitely the one. You don't know if she's definitely the one. Just daven for your zivug. Daven that Hashem should make you go easy, and you should find your zivug."
But Rabbi, what you told us is the exact opposite, because she'll not marry a woman who has been divorced by her husband.
Right, but he could, but not a widow. The widow limitation is only on a Kohen Gadol, not on a regular Kohen. He can't marry a divorcee. He can marry a...
But why, if she was already predestined?
We don't know. I told you. Then you have a second reason, because of Grusha, her husband is still alive, and there's what do you call it? It's that there's less of a purity there. There's a widow there. That happens. By a Grusha, there's a certain level of it could hurt the kedusha of the Kohen.
Kohen becomes a Kohen Hadol and he married previously a widow, he has to divorce her?
No. Good question. If he got married to a widow and then became the Kohen Gadol, he doesn't have to. The Gemara says actually Yeshua ben Gamla married Martha bas Baisus. He married a widow and then eventually he became the Kohen Gadol. Does not have to divorce her. All right. See you tomorrow.